Being cautious in Qigong practice. That is going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. Look, as with so many of the topics I talk about on this channel, my aim in discussing this topic of caution in Qigong practice is to give you a bit of a balanced view of it, to help you to avoid going too extremely in one direction or another, but to find a healthy balance where you can get the most value from your Qigong practice. And now, again, at the extremes, there are some people who advocate extreme caution in Qigong practice. Like you have to be super careful before you do even relatively simple practices. You have to make sure that everything you're shown directly by a teacher who's like got 1,000 years of experience. Sometimes the expectations are a bit unrealistic. It's like they have to have lived in the mountains for 30 years and so on, before you can even work with very basic things. So, the extreme caution. And then at the other end, you have people who are like, I'll just do whatever I like. And this practice here, even though there are knowledgeable, experienced Qigong practitioners or cultural traditions around the practice that say, hey, you should be careful with this practice, you should avoid it at this time, or you should not do it until you've got a certain base of experience and so on. And even if there are these warnings, they go, it doesn't matter, I'm going to do whatever I like and I'll just do it anyway. Well, one is excessively limiting and one is excessively foolhardy. And I have certainly seen both. And I've seen how for some people they become very, very limited in their practice. And I've also, unfortunately, seen people who've taken this foolhardy approach really cause themselves problems from doing that and done themselves significant harm. Now, having said that, this is not to scare anyone about Qigong, but it's to recognize this potential in a balanced way. There are potential dangers in Qigong. It doesn't mean it's dangerous, as there's a high risk of danger, but if you're completely foolhardy, yeah, of course there are going to be some dangers. There's an article actually I wrote a little while ago, which you might like to read. It's not quite the same topic, but it relates to it. And we'll put a link to that below. And I think the title was How Dangerous is Qigong? And in there, I laid out, some of the main possible dangers in Qigong. And it's helpful to be aware of those. But then at the same time, I also talked a bit about, well, how dangerous is it really? And the analogy I used in there was that of walking, going for a walk. For most people, going for a walk is a healthy thing to do. You don't need to generally take any great caution with it. You're like, yeah, go for a walk. That'll be good. That'll be healthy for you. However, when we get out to different situations, there are some times where it's useful to have some cautions. So someone who has specific injuries or health issues, there are going to be cautions about them taking a walk. Actually, an example of this right now is my father, who is getting older and starting to lose some of his physical capabilities and so on. He now needs to walk with a walker, a frame to support him. And he's getting used to it. But often he's like, well, to begin with, he didn't want to use his walker. He's like, no, I don't want that. I'm going to go walk by myself. And of course, because of some of the issues with his physical capabilities, he's prone to falling. And that can be a real, real danger to someone of advanced age. And yeah, it was becoming a real problem. No, I don't want to use my walker. I'm just going to walk. And he did fall a couple of times, and fortunately wasn't too badly injured, but it was a real problem. And little by little, he's got used to, like, okay, I need to use a walker. So he's using it more often. So yeah, there are those cases where even someone walking, there might need to be cautions. They might sometimes need to wear certain shoes. They might need to be aware of certain dangers around them. But for most people, you can just go do it. Another aspect where there can be dangers if you get someone really obsessive about walking. They're like, right, I haven't done much walking, but now I'm going to walk 100 miles or 100 kilometers a day. People can get obsessive And unfortunately, sometimes they get obsessive about Qigong. This is why I make this analogy, and they dive in, like, I'm going to do all these things. Someone who hasn't done much walking, then they'd go, I'm going to walk 100 kilometers a day. Yeah, there can be dangers in that. All sorts of issues for their health and potential injuries from not preparing themselves properly before building up. And that happens again with particularly some more intense Qigong practices, or you might call some of them more advanced, where you do need to have prepared your body, your mind, your energy system to be able to cope with that, and you need to build up gradually. That can be a danger too. So, yeah, I guess in terms of taking that balanced view to caution, what I'd like to convey is that overall Qigong is very safe for most people in most situations, again, like going out for a walk. And so as such, you generally don't need to be too cautious. You don't need to be too vigilant or hyper-vigilant and worried about, oh, what if I do this wrong? What if I do that wrong? For most practices, you're going to be fine to just give it a try by yourself even. You don't necessarily have to have a teacher watching you all the time or anything like that. You're going to be fine. But at the same time, when you do see or hear, or you have a teacher advising you, and they give you some cautions and they say, hey, you need to be careful about this. You need to pay attention and watch out for this. Or maybe you really need to do this before you progress onto this within a practice. Or even, hey, this practice is not the right one for you. You should, maybe look at this one instead. It's worthwhile paying attention to those cautions. It doesn't mean that has to be the final word, that it's like, okay, it's impossible for me to do whatever the thing is. It doesn't have to be a complete barrier to you. But to really, approach that with some caution. Listen to the hopefully wise words of advice that you get. And again, that could be someone talking to you, it could be in a book or so on. And to see, and it could be sometimes you might then look for other sources of information to understand better why there is the caution around this before you dive too deep into something, because there is potential of harm. So balanced view is, don't box yourself in too much. Give yourself freedom to enjoy, explore Qigong practices, but do pay attention to the cautions when they do come up. Hopefully that's helpful for at least someone, and I look forward to seeing you on another vlog soon.